my name is Anastasia Kluchinskaya. I'm a literary scholar primarily, though I dabble in many different things. Can you guys all hear me when I'm like this far from the microphone? Great. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about Taylor Swift as a transmedia storyteller. And as I was sort of putting together this presentation very serendipitously, I came across this recent feature on Taylor Swift in the New York Times Magazine, where the author of the story, the journalist, sort of confesses, "I don't know if I could tell a story about Taylor Swift that's better than the story she tells about herself. Through every song, every dance, every video, every social transmission. She is a master not just at the revelation of information, but the analysis of each revelation, the scrutiny of that analysis, the contextualization of it all. In other words, Taylor Swift is not simply very good at telling her own story. She is a storyteller." This obviously isn't an astounding revelation to many of us. For one thing, Taylor made her debut in country music, which is a genre of music deeply rooted in the storytelling tradition, and particularly in the kind of repetition with variation that creates twists in the tale. Yet pop music, which is the genre that I think is most obviously associated with Taylor in this day and age, is often less about storytelling and considered to be more about capturing an emotion in a particular moment in time, as what Swift describes, putting a picture frame around a feeling, which implies, of course, a kind of stasis, a freezing of a moment in time through song. And yet, Swift's songs are defined by story and narrative unfolding over time. One of her best-known songs, for example, All Too Well, is a story of a relationship, disjointedly and non-linearly told, jumping tenses as it moves between past, present, and future. So yes, I want to begin by emphasizing the obvious. The way that Taylor Swift returns to story as a way to process and understand human experience. In her music, a crush on a boy she likes but her parents don't becomes Love Story, a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with a happy ending. The Story of Us, a song explicitly divided into chapters via voiceover, opens with the confession, "I used to think they'll tell the story of us," making a relationship synonymous with the tale of it. In Long Live, she describes her companion as a hero from a storybook page, seemingly unable to see the world around her except through the lens of fairy tales and romances that she's read. And singing about yet another boy who she thinks is dating the wrong girl, she emphasizes, "She'll never know your story like I do." For in Swift's world, to know someone is to know their story. And so with that in mind, I'd like to posit that Taylor Swift is a transmedia storyteller. That is, someone who utilizes music, lyrics, music videos, social media, promotional images, and paratext, such as album liner notes, and even fashion, to craft a vast narrative universe. Transmedia storytelling is, these days, the primary mode of today's major franchises, such as Marvel and DC, and usually incorporates everything from tie-in novels and DVD commentaries to social media to create an expansive story world that motivates fan engagement. So transmedia storytelling as an idea was first articulated by the media scholar Henry Jenkins, who defines it by writing, "A transmedia story is one that unfolds across multiple media platforms, with each new text making a distinctive and valuable contribution to the whole. In the ideal form of transmedia storytelling, each medium does what it does best." And there's obviously an analogy to be drawn here to celebrity culture, which of course lies in carefully crafted narrative making, to which the tools of narratology and literary theory, which is my wheelhouse, can be so productively applied. Stars, such as Taylor, for example, are indisputably inherently transmedial, as the star studies scholar Sean Redmond suggests when he writes that stars are fictive constructs whose images and stories get dispersed systematically across print, press, television, music, game, and virtual sites and networks. We understand celebrities as the sum parts of these textual fragments, as unified storied beings who grant and award us pleasure through the way we can see them across multiple platforms. However, what makes Swift's case unique is the porousness between her life and her art, which is due in part to the highly confessional nature of her songs, where she draws on personal experience in her songwriting, but also porousness amplified by the constant scrutiny that Swift finds herself under. And so reading Swift's work as a transmedia narrative then reveals what is at the core, I think, of one of Swift's strengths. Her ability to not only constantly reinvent herself, which the two lovely presenters that went before me talked about, but also in that reinvention to subvert, to recuperate, and to rewrite the narratives about her, talk about her, and the pressures placed on female celebrities within our culture. The Swiftian story world accounts not only for her success, but allows her control over an increasingly public life story. And so here, in my original draft, I was going to pause to define the idea of an era, but I think we've all talked about it enough to understand that an era is kind of a standard way we talk in pop music about an album and everything that goes within it. And as Swift herself admitted in the documentary Miss Americana, this kind of reinvention, this idea of eras, is more a necessity than a preference. She said, female artists are constantly forced to reinvent themselves, or else you're out of a job. Constantly having to reinvent, constantly having to find new facets of yourself that people find to be shiny. But in Swift's apt hands, eras also become chapters of her life. That is, installments in an ongoing transmedia franchise that ensures literally record-breaking success, as well as control over her story while under intense media scrutiny. And I think this is in part because each album has a certain concept underlying it, which is executed across multiple platforms and mediums. And we had a very wonderful presentation yesterday about the way that each era has a kind of vibe to it, which you can't really trademark, but which is instantly recognizable. So, for example, I like to use Speak Now as an example, which is marked lyrically by the idea of romance and fairy tale, with song titles such as Enchanted, Long Live, Castles Crumbling, lyrics such as the story of us looks like a tragedy now, you held your head like a hero on a history book page, I had the time of my life fighting dragons with you, and so on. At the same time, the visuals for the album see Swift donning elaborate princess dresses in pinks and purples, including for the promotion of a tie-in perfume, Wonderstruck, which goes for hundreds of dollars on eBay these days. It's named after the line Enchanted. And the tour, too, produced some iconic images of Swift in a purple dress. Singing on a balcony, reiterating the way that Speak Now is not just an album, but a kind of storybook world. And Swift does the same for each album. And if you happen to get the Enchanted cocktail out there, they actually put edible glitter in it. So it sparkles and shines, just like the lyric from Enchanted, this night is sparkling, don't you let it go. Again, none of which can really be trademarked. You can't trademark glitter, but we recognize it. It's distinctively part of that chapter of Swift's life. But more than just making each era a kind of distinctive concept or sort of object that can be immediately identified, to the point where you can identify each era very easily and very visually. This is merch that she has sold where each of the tailors up there is from a different era and they're deeply distinct. But more than that, Swift constantly builds callbacks and variations into songs across albums, suggesting the continuation of existing narratives across years and decades, creating the impression of a built world and an ongoing story that unfolds from chapter to chapter to chapter. So, for example, she moves from the line, "Loving him was red" on the album Red, to "I once believed love would be burning red, but it's golden" on Daylight from the album Lover. On Speak Now's Mean, for example, she imagines that someday I'll be living in a big old city, while the opening track of 1989, Welcome to New York, celebrates Swift's transition to adulthood, to superstardom, and yes, her success in the big city. Swifties continually seek out such continuities, mapping the development of Swift as a person and the stories she tells about herself and the world through them. And since each album, and therefore each chapter, is so distinctive, Swift is easily able to reprise this imagery and make it legible to her legion of fans. For example, on the Eras tour, she donned a purple ball gown for the Speak Now portion of the tour and hinted at which album would be re-recorded next in the music video for the Midnight's track, Bejeweled. You can see her pressing a purple number 3 in the elevator, and you can see the final image of the video, which is a direct callback to a very distinctive image from her Speak Now tour. And as she sings in that very song, Bejeweled, "I can reclaim the land," and it's widely theorized that it's her masters that she is reclaiming, her land and her story world. And Swifties, of course, correctly read these hints, feeling rewarded and feeling in the know, such as they did when Speak Now did in fact turn out to be the next album to be re-recorded. And so to finish up, I want to talk briefly about Blank Space, which I think is an excellent example of the way that Swift's semi-autobiographical transmedia storytelling allows her to exert control over the narratives told about her in her increasingly public life, which is aptly demonstrated by her single Blank Space, which is famously a parody of her media image. And so Swift elaborates on the genesis of this song at a listening session at the Grammy Museum, where she says, we're describing this media image, she says, "How complex this character was that the media had drawn up for me. Like, she's jet-setting all over the world, collecting men, and like, oh, she's so clingy, and when she gets them, she can get any of them, but then they run because she's so crazy, and she moves in day 2, and I just thought, this is amazing. I need to write a song from this girl's perspective." And I just decided to be her for one song. I kind of tried to imitate her voice there, but I'm no Taylor Swift. So what I want to emphasize here is Swift's immediate approach to her media image as a character. This recognition that what is part of the narrative making of celebrity culture is just that, it's narrative making populated by characters. And more than that, a character that could populate a story world and serve as the basis of a narrative. And a character, notably, whose interiority Swift is eager to inhabit. Just as in other songs, she's imagined herself, for example, interrupting a wedding, as in Speak Now, or having an affair, as in August or Betty. And Swift truly commits to this in transmedia form. In the song and the music video, she truly inhabits this character. "I'm a nightmare, dressed like a daydream," she purrs. And in the music video, she really does inhabit that character of the mad woman, with her temper tantrums, quote, screaming, crying, perfect storm, and destruction. Yet again, an example of ever-multiplying threads Mad women and angry women being a theme that Swift returns to frequently, including on Folklore's Mad Woman and Evermore's Champagne Problems. And the music video that accompanies this song further extravagantly builds up this fictional world in which Swift inhabits a made-up character. The album's famous long list of ex-lovers, or Starbucks lovers for those of us with hearing difficulties, becomes a portrait gallery in that extravagant mansion, literalizing the line, "I'll leave you with a nasty scar," as she stabs each portrait upon the breakup. But the music video also evokes other literary associations. For example, the decadence of The Great Gatsby, a film adaptation of which had come out in 2013, so just the year before this album. Directed by Baz Luhrmann, it had a star-studded cast, and the soundtrack was sort of everywhere. Lana Del Rey's "Will You No Longer Love Me," "If I'm No Longer Young and Beautiful" was on the radio everywhere. So she was tapping into that zeitgeist. More than that, the music video was filmed at Oheka Castle on Long Island, right there. The mansions of which were, of course, an inspiration for Fitzgerald in The Great Gatsby. And she would, of course, also then name-check The Great Gatsby in her next album, Reputation, singing "Feeling So Gatsby" for that whole year. And yet, despite all of these references, it is still Swift's world. After the video debuted, not only were there all sorts of behind-the-scenes looks into the making of the video, where you could sort of virtually walk around the castle and all the rooms of the castle. You could get a screenshot of that, but you could very much do that. It was sort of kind of a VR, three-dimensional technology. And she would also reprise the imagery of this music video at the American Music Awards this year, where she re-inhabits that character, complete with an elaborate set that imitates the music video itself. And the castle that I just mentioned, Oheka Castle, featured in Succession, was just recently in a headline of Elle magazine, which goes so far as to claim that Taylor Swift's blank space castle appears in Succession, as if Swift owns this castle and it's her castle and she's got dibs on it, which I think evidences the way that it's even further become part of her story world. And so blank space may be a caricature of Swift's media image, an exaggeration that shows just how ridiculous and over the top her media image has become. But it's also a recuperation of the narrative that embraces that part of the story, that as a story and as a character, and makes it part of an ever-widening narrative world, kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, except that this is, of course, the Taylor Swift Cinematic Universe, and we're all just living in it. And so in the couple, actually, I think I'm just running out of time, so I would have loved to talk about the way that she continues to do this throughout Reputation, and to continue the kind of the logic of blank space, and to take her media image and embrace it. But since I'm running out of time, I'll just finish up by saying that I, for one, am really eager to see how Swift continues to develop, not just as a musician or a feminist or a filmmaker, but also as a storyteller, and the way that she uses the affordances of new technologies and new possibilities, from TikTok, which we heard about yesterday, to social media, to just about anything technology it throws our way, the way that she incorporates that into her marketing, her storytelling, her projects, and innovates even further as a storyteller. Thank you.